Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to continue our series looking at Warrior Shaman matchups and metas, and we're going to be looking at Warrior Shaman versus Discipline Priest Rogue, or we're going to call it DPR from now on. So as always, we're going to start by looking at the spec. This is the spec that I would consider to be the best spec for purely fighting DPRs. Obviously, this isn't necessarily the best spec for 2s holistically, this is just for DPR. If you're going to maybe fight a DPR in a tournament, or if you're going in knowing you're fighting DPR and you want to have, the best spec, then this is probably what I would go for. So to start off with, it's a toughness spec. Generally, I do keep toughness generally in 2s. I think it's useful, but the thing that you'll probably notice that's slightly different from the majority of my other 2 spec is this one actually has Manatide. The reason I use Manatide, or think Manatide's worth it versus DPRs, is they don't have any pets, so totem stomping is a little bit trickier for them than it is, say, for like a Lock Druid or a hunter, and secondly, it's a very mana intensive fight if you're doing it well. Generally speaking, it will go quite long. You're going to have to fight through 2 evasions on the rogue before you can probably get kills, or you might get a bit lucky and get kill onto the priest. But either way, it's going to be mana intensive, so getting the mana tide is probably worth it. And then secondly, you'll notice that I have Healing Grace as well. So this is a dispel resistance. I quite like this just for dispel resists on keeping my earth shields up, and then my bloodlust to try and get some mana from it. Obviously, priests can dispel, but it's an expensive, very expensive spell to use. So getting the resists, even if you only get 1 resist, that's still quite a bit of a chunk of mana from the priest. So I think it's worth the 3 points. If you don't want to go for the Healing Grace, then probably just drop it back into Nature's Guardian. However, generally speaking, I think they will most of the time be going on to your warrior rather than you. And if they're doing that, then obviously Nature's Guardian isn't, so it's not very useful. So that's the reason for going for that swap. Then we're going to go straight on to Totem Matrix. So these are the totems that I would generally recommend you use in this matchup. Earth is obviously going to be your Tremor Totem. This is going to break your fears, and we're going to go into this more later on, but Tremor Totem is really important. Fire Totem wise, there's not really anything that you can use. I've got Magma Totem down here, so rank 1 Magma Totem at the start. Maybe you can knock the rogue out of stealth, but it's probably pretty unlikely, but it's harmless to do, and you haven't really got an alternative Fire Totem. Then Water Totem, it's going to be Poison Cleansing. As I said, it is mana intensive, so Mana Spring kind of seems like it would be good, but poisons are just so important for the DPR, and if you can keep the poisons off, the longer you keep poisons off and the more less poison you have on targets, you're just going to be doing better and better. And then finally, it's going to be Wind Fury Totem for air. Grounding, again, you probably want to cycle grounding in, especially if they're trying to burst your warrior down, which they generally will be doing. So, getting a grounding down for that Mind Blast. The important thing, obviously, with grounding, as opposed to earth shocking spells, is grounding. The spell goes off, it costs them mana. So it's generally better to ground something than shock something. But you do want to keep Wind Fury up all the time to get that maximum damage. So, all of that having been said, we're now going to go and have a quick look at a clip of me playing with as a random warrior versus a DPR. And the reason we're going to look at this clip is this clip demonstrates quite nicely what most DPRs will aim to do against a warrior shaman, how they win. And the reason for this is it's a very strong play for them to do, and at least at first it seems very hard for the warrior shaman to counter this play. And essentially what this video we're going to do within this video is we're going to discuss methods of countering this play and how you can work around it to hopefully take the win. Okay, so here we are in Nagrand Arena. This is me actually playing an Orc for once. I was testing the Orc Racial and Stun Resist and how I felt, whether I felt is really significantly impactful, and I'm playing with just a random warrior. Don't know him, it was just a few games. So we're going to start here on Nagrand. I think Nagrand unfortunately is actually the hardest arena for the warrior shaman, just because of totem placements. We're going to go into that in a bit. However, for now we'll start the clip, and I'm just going to place down my totems. Tremor, then Poison Cleansing and Wind Fury. Tremor's the most important, then by Poison Cleansing. And we're just going to start. I open up there quickly with a Purge. The reason I Purge rather than say do an earth shield is another way of getting into combat. Is if I do a defensive cast, similar to drink bugging, there's a half a second, millisecond delay entering combat, and as I exit Ghost Wolf, don't go straight into combat, I can actually get sapped. So you always want to start offensively. Purge has the longest range of any of our offensive instant casts, so I use a Purge. They then open up on me, but importantly what you can see is they have got 2 dots onto the warrior, so they're going to be aiming to kill the warrior. He's undead, so he has Devouring Plague, which is a slight advantage for the DPR in this situation, and they then just cheap shot onto me. I don't resist despite being Orc, whip. And then they're going to do a kidney shot straight away afterwards. And then, as you can see, the rogue is sprinting and killing all 3 of my totems. I'm still sat in a stun, which means that I am completely open to be feared, and my totems have also now been stomped by the rogue, which means I have to sit the fear. If I trinket any of this, then I just instantly get blinded, and at the end of the fear, it drops me out of combat, and I will get sapped. And essentially, this is the technique. They then kill my warrior while I'm sapped. If at any point I trinket any of those CCs, I will get an 8-second blind, which is a longer CC than any of the other ones, or bar sap. So technically you could choose to trinket the sap if you get stuck in a situation. I would say trinket the sap and then instantly NS. The reason for that is you're either sitting in a sap or you're sitting in a blind. They're both the same duration, they're both physical. You might as well, but you still get the NS off and it's your best chance. So that's the general strategy, that being fear into sap. You get it across the board. It's not always, it's not just 2v2 DPR that do it. You'll see it against RMPs, and you need to learn how to deal with that. So the rest of the video now, we're just going to have a discussion of how to stop this fear into sap from a DPR. Okay, so how do we disrupt this combination? Well, we can disrupt it in a variety of ways and in certain different stages within the play itself. The first way, and arguably the simplest way of doing that, is by disrupting the fear using a tremor totem. Now, in later expansions of the game, tremor totems, or totems in general, can be protected. However, in TBC, they can't. They have 5 life and they are incredibly easy to stomp. In the case of DPRs, they will know that you are obviously going to try and tremor this fear, so they will be looking to destroy it. So in order to protect it, we have to place it in difficult to reach places and play around the totem. So we're going to now quickly look at, we're going to start with Blade's Edge Arena. Every arena is different with your totem placements, and certain ones are better for hiding totems than others, depending upon the complexity of the arena. Blade's Edge is relatively good, I'd say, for hiding it. So we're going to jump in and have a quick look at this image. So what we have here is a look at one end of the Blade's Edge bridge, and we're going to assume that this is our end and we are just leaving the start zone, and this is what we have in front of us. So if we say that we're going to start with the right side position, so down below on the lower ground behind the pillar on the furthest right blue dot. So the reason that this is a really nice position to place your totems is obviously it's below ground, on the low ground, so if the priest or the rogue is on the bridge, they can't instantly stomp your totem. And the second reason that it is really nice, and specifically the more important reason actually for this position, is what it does is the pillar we are standing by blocks our right hand side approach. What this means is in the early game, at the very beginning, we do not want to get sapped. That's about as bad as it can get, and normally we can obviously just be sat in Ghost Wolf and that will give us the protection of being in Ghost Wolf. However, when we're placing totems, we are in fact in cast form and we will not be in combat, which means we are therefore susceptible to sap. So what you will see here and across most of these place positions we have here in Blade's Edge is they are such that our right hand side, so the closest side to where the rogue will be coming from, is in fact blocked, and the rogue won't be able to quickly shadow step sappers. So what we have here is we are protecting the totems from being hit from above, and we are protecting ourselves from being sapped. So the next one sort of position, again very similar to this one, is the central blue dot. here we can sort of hug that pseudo pillar, and again our right hand side is blocked, so we can't be sapped. If we were on the opposite side where the red dot is, we were to position ourselves there, then we would be, as I said, susceptible to being sapped, because despite us not having, despite the totem being a tiny little bit better to sort of protected, unfortunately in that position it will be we're open on the right hand side, and therefore the rogue will be able to sap us if we were to place our totems in that position, which is why we're keeping it to the blue dot. So after we've got this central position, there is the blue position on the ramp. This is arguably the weakest of the 4 totem positions on Blade's Edge that we're sort of looking here, but again it gives us that breathing room to place our totems before we can get sapped, but it is however slightly open to be, say, wanded from the bridge. And then finally we have the position at the top. The advantage, as always, with this position is, as well as it being physically out of line of sight, it's also a little bit tricky to visibly see them, because priest rogues don't have pets, so they can't just automatically do it. They have to physically target and notice the totem. Just hiding it somewhere they can't necessarily see, or they don't check, is quite often a way of keeping it protected. So to cover Nagrand, as I said, it's not anywhere near as good when it comes to hiding your totems as Blade's Edge does. One thing I've actually started to do, I don't think it's in the clips just because I've started relatively recently, is to place my first tremor back in the start zone and just leave it there. Then when I move to whatever pillar I'm going to place my totems, I place the Wind Fury, I place the Poison Cleansing, and I won't place the tremor. So as a result, the DPR will see my sort of totem farm that I've placed, but they might not necessarily notice the one that I placed back at the start, and they might think I've just left that there out of sight, out of mind. And as I said, because they're not using a pet, they can't automatically go there. They have to physically identify as being a totem that I've placed, and therefore run to it. And you'd be surprised, quite often people don't actually notice it. Along with that as well, there is the sort of cubby holes where the shadow sight eyes spawn. You can hide totems there if you end up positioning yourself there. The downside slightly is that you kind of run out of quite into the open to like mana burns, etc., by positioning yourself there. But if you do end up going in that direction, then definitely try to sneak totems there. It's particularly good in matchups or positions when you find yourself being the aggressor and you're pushing into their pillar. So if they're defending their pillar and you're sort of pushing onto it, what I generally find is that I'll try and place my totems in out of line of sight of their position, and sort of round in that little alcove area. And then finally we obviously have Lordaeron. So Lordaeron, as you'll see in the clips that are going to come up, one of my favourite positions against DPR is to place all of my totems in a little farm in the start zone itself, so sort of on the left hand side in the start zone. They will then activate through the wall to hit me as I'm stood outside of the start zone, but I won't be all the way pushed onto the tomb. And as I said, in the footage you'll see, generally I won't be fighting on the tomb. I'll be backwards towards the start zone, but as a result all of those totems are kind of sort of pulsing through the wall and hitting me, but they are incredibly tricky to actually totem stomp. Okay, let's say we've tried our best, we've placed our Tremor Totem in some really cool and innovative spots, but unfortunately they're still getting stomped and we're gonna get feared. How can we deal with this fear into sap combination now? Well, there's basically sort of 3 ways we can do it. 2 of them are pretty similar, to be honest. The first one is for us to tell our warrior that we are going to trinket. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to get sapped and I'm going to trinket the sap. Then when you do that, the warrior then needs to instantly intervene you. And what this does is, intervene means that is a buff that gets applied to you, so the warrior will move back to you, similar to charge, but he moves onto a friendly target, and then you then get the intervene buff, which means the next attack that would hit you will hit the warrior instead. So what this results in is, generally speaking, a rogue will be waiting for you to trinket the sap or trinket the fear. When you do that, he will then instantaneously blind you. However, if you've got the intervene buff on you and the warrior is close enough, he will get the blind. So the attack that should have gone onto you will go on to the warrior and he receives the blind. And he'll have a dot on him probably because he's taking damage and the blind will break. The second way of using intervene is at the tail end of your fear, so about 2 seconds maybe until your fear's over, when the rogue would be vanishing into a sap onto you. Again, you intervene, or the warrior intervenes onto you, and then the sap that would hit you hits the warrior. You can then instantly purge, get into combat, and then move away, and you're free to move. So if you're not going to use intervene, there is one other method that we can do to prevent getting snapped, and that is to take the fear, but take the fear when you're in Ghost Wolf. So this is particularly useful if it's maybe slightly later on in the match and you've got a second fear maybe coming. So you've got the priest is running after you, he'll be running towards you, you all might end up sort of kiting him in Ghost Wolf or something like that. Rather than doing that, rather than trying to spam totems, you go into Ghost Wolf, you eat the fear. You know that you're getting feared, that's fine, but you're in Ghost Wolf, so as the fear ends, you're still in Ghost Wolf, and despite the fact that the rogue might vanish to try and sap you, you're in Ghost Wolf, and therefore you're immune to the sap. So in this case, again, you just want to instantly purge as quickly as possible, get into combat, and you will avoid the sap. So all of this said, as always, we're going to get straight into some footage now. I do hope you've enjoyed this brief tutorial. It's a little bit different from obviously previous ones where I sort of spoke a bit broader, but I honestly think until you really get to grips with dealing with the fear into sap combination that DPRs do, you're going to really struggle to sort of get past a certain point and a certain skill level of DPRs, because that's what a lot of them are going to do. Once you've got that bit down, once you've got this the fear into sap down, we can sort of explore some more complicated strategies, but that'll be for another video. So I hope you've enjoyed it as always, guys. If you have any comments or questions, down in the comments section as always. Otherwise, if you don't fancy that, you can join Discord, hit me up on there. So thanks for watching, guys, and yeah, enjoy the footage.
Baby, wait, I know that you're afraid, but it'll be okay if you just stay with me, and we can run from here, and we can disappear, and they won't find us where we are going, dear. So baby, hold on to me, 'cause I know I can make you believe something that only we can see. Oh, so baby, hold on to me, hold on to me. You're the night sky trying to make me see your stars, but the dark gets so lonely. Now I see violet, I can feel silence, and the dark's all that I see. When your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound, I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. You're the night sky hiding behind dark gray clouds. I can't figure you out now. I see you're blue. There is so much cold in you, and the silence is so loud when you go. I just stay dancing with my shadow all day. Watch the tide. I can't find the point where our two paths align. Right, you're the night sky. I'm trying to see your stars, but I've always feared the dark. Now I see violet. I can feel your silence. You always feel so far when your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound. I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. 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 because baby boy, that's my life. You took your time and then I took mine, but it was worth the time because it showed me what I had to find. Our best memory was when you faded away, and I ain't ashamed of all the games that we used to play. There probably was time when I wouldn't stay. No, I wouldn't stay. You paint a picture in my mind. You wanna leave it all behind. In a world that's turning all the time, nothing could stop me longing for your eyes. I won't let it die. I can feel